Shortly, the Senate will be gaveling in and will begin debating federal spending to fund the government through the end of this budget year. Live coverage here on C-SPAN 2.
Madam President.
The senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Madam President. As we begin our work this afternoon, I wanted to come to the floor and make a few comments about the Homeland Security appropriations bill that is now going to be included in the amendment offered by Senator Mikulski and Senator Shelby as part of appropriations bill that is coming over from the House. And this is such an important step forward, Madam President, not just for the government, but for the private sector jobs that depend on reliable, transparent, and appropriate government spending, but for the whole country, because we have been in gridlock, stopped on our funding bills for months now, and not talking about the things that make Americans happy and prosperous, which are smart investments in their future, in their interest. We've been just fighting about appropriation bills. Well, that fight hopefully is coming to an end because of the really extraordinary leadership of the senator from Maryland, Senator Mikulski, the senior senator from Maryland, and the newly minted, but not new to the committee, a true veteran of the Appropriations Committee, but newly minted chairwoman of our committee, and the able partnership with Senator Shelby from Alabama, again, a long-standing appropriator who understands practical politics and compromise is necessary to move anything of importance through this body. And I can't thank them enough and their staff for salvaging several of these important bills. Now, they weren't able to come to agreement on everything. We still are, I am and others, troubled that we're not going to see much progress in the area of education and health as much as we would like. But that's for another day. But we're going to move forward on what we can move forward together, and one of those areas is the Homeland Security, funding for Homeland Security, which is a pretty big bill by federal government standards. It's not the largest. It's nearly not the smallest. It's $42 billion. That is not chump change. It's a significant amount of money that the taxpayers provide us to make decisions about their security. And it funds everything from Border Patrol and protection to customs and immigration. It funds the Coast Guard, which is very, very important part of our operations, and of course we feel that directly as a coastal state in Louisiana and very familiar with the needs of coastal communities. The Coast Guard is always there. It funds a number of other entities. I do not want to fail to mention cybersecurity, which is one of the newest, most frightening threats really to our country. This really didn't even exist at all 20 years ago. And you can see the ever-evolving capacity of people that would do us harm, not just governments that don't like the United States, not just groups that don't like the United States, but individuals who have some bone or some beef, some anger, can actually take it out in really unbelievable ways through the Internet, attacking sensitive material and data. This is not just an attack to the government functions of our country, but we have seen any number of attacks on our private infrastructure, which is so critical to our existence, whether it's our water systems, our financial systems, our utility systems, electricity systems. I could go on and on. This is a very important responsibility for the federal government to step up and try to figure this out, working really with the Department of Defense, the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Homeland Security, which I fund. And this is no insignificant matter. On the contrary, it's important for us to not only have the right money, but investing it in the right places. And we're trying very hard to do that. That's why it would have been very dangerous, in my view, to have this bill stuck. We would be funding last year's priorities, not being able to account all the new intelligence that has come in over the last 12 months, And this is an evolving, ever-growing, ever-changing threat. We would have been spending taxpayer money, Madam President, funding last year's threats, not tomorrow's threats. That's why Barbara Mikulski is the chair of our committee. The chairman fought so hard to say we must move some of these appropriation bills forward so that we're funding the right things and not wasting taxpayer money, and she was right. So she was able to negotiate with Senator Shelby a yes, not a no, not a maybe, but a yes for the Homeland Security bill, and I could not be a happier chairman. I also want to thank Senator Coates, who is my able ranking member from Indiana. He worked hand and glove with me to put this bill together. Our staffs worked very, very closely together. We had a few minor disagreements and views. We were able, I think, to work them out and work through it. Obviously, this bill is here with his signature and mine on it. And we were able to negotiate in very good faith with our House counterparts, and I want to thank them. So what Barbara Mikulski says, the four corners have signed off on our appropriations bill, both in the House, the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, and it took some give and take, but, you know, that's what we have to do. I want to just highlight a few things that are in the bill that people have been very interested in and just take a few more minutes to do so. First, the bill includes total discretionary spending of $39.6 billion. So I said $42 billion. That's what it was a few years ago. Like every committee, we've taken a cut, we've taken a reduction. Contrary to what you might hear, we are tightening our belts. We are cutting into some muscle. We are cutting into some bone. It is not easy, but it is necessary. But there is a point where you can't keep cutting or you won't be able to provide the security in the word homeland security. It'll just be homeland. There won't be a big security piece around us because we've chopped it up. And when people that want to harm this country see that, they will find the weakness. Now, I'm not trying to scare up additional funding, but I'm just speaking the truth about if you want a secure border, you can talk about it or you can actually build one. If you want a strong Customs Department that moves people through quickly but makes sure that no bad things come into our country, then you need to fund it. This does not happen on just a wish and a prayer. So we have a flat budget. We've reorganized things to accommodate what I believe and Senator Coates believes are the priorities for the members here representing the people. The Coast Guard, cybersecurity, border security, travel facilitation, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. For the Coast Guard, the bill includes $9 billion in discretionary spending, which is $400 million above the President's request. We cut out some other things, but those of us on the committee believe the Coast Guard's important. The Coast Guard is on the front line for drug interdiction, which I don't have to explain to people. It's not just classified, that now we have drug kingpins owning submarines that can bring drugs into the United States. People read about this. It's true. It's not science fiction. We have to make sure the Coast Guard has assets to stop drugs coming into our country in smart, aggressive ways, working in partnership with other governments. I don't have to remind everyone about the oil spill, the terrible accident. That trial is still going on in New Orleans as I speak. Hundreds of lawyers still debating the worst oil spill in the history of the country. Who showed up? The Coast Guard. They have to have all sorts of equipment to be able to respond for drug interdiction, which is different than oil spill cleanup. And, of course, people are rescued literally every day by the brave men and women of the Coast Guard that risk their lives to keep our commerce and our recreational boating moving throughout this nation. We have $557 million for production of the 6th National Security Cutter. And let me say something about this that people don't understand, and I see my good friend Dick Shelby. He most certainly understands this, a senator from Alabama. But I want people that are not on our Appropriations Committee to understand something. You know, when most people in America buy a big item, like a house or even when they send their kids to college, they finance that. They take that big hit, like $40,000 to send their child to college for 1 year, or $120,000 for $160,000 for 4 years, if you're going to a very fancy, expensive school. Happily for us at LSU, we get a great bargain and a great education for $10,000. But for families, even $10,000 for 4 years is a lot of money. They don't just pay cash for that. They finance it. The senator from Alabama knows this. Our problem is, under the rules of Washington, we cannot finance most things. People don't understand this. We have to pay cash. So I had to find, because we need that national security cutter, Senator, I had to find $557 million in our budget to pay for it this year, even though it takes a long time to build it. Now, I think this should be changed. Senator Snowe, who was the chair of this committee on Defense, Navy, for many years, thought it needed to be changed, but it's not changed yet. So I just want people to know the pressures that are under our bill sometimes. We have to fund these big items in our year and basically pay cash. Now, yes, ultimately this money is being borrowed through the general fund, but I don't want to get into technical arguments, but as far as we're concerned, we're paying cash for it in our budget, $557 million this year for the National Security Cutter. $77 million for long lead time, $335 for 6 new fast response cutters, $90 million for a new C-130J aircraft. I've invested at my priority $10 million for military housing for the Coast Guard. The Army, the Navy, the Air Force have been really upgrading their housing. The poor Coast Guard, because they're smaller, they're more isolated. They're not in areas where we can take advantage of that public-private partnership that's working so well. I think our Coast Guard families need some support and was able to find some funding there for them. I don't need to take much more time. I know the senator from Alabama is here to speak. I'll take 5 more minutes, and if he needs me to cease, I will. But we also put some investments in here to address the cyber threat, which the President has described, and I agree with him, one of the most serious economic and national security challenges we face as a nation. This bill includes $757 million, which is $313 above last year, and I was happy to do that. I think this is a priority. We've moved other things around in the budget, but this is a real threat. It's evolving every day, and we've got to have the research and technology to address it and work with the private sector to see what we can do to keep their networks safe and our government strong. $7 billion for disaster relief fund. This was also a battle that we fought. The money is in there for Sandy, for Isaac, for Irene, for Ike, for Gustav, for Rita, and Katrina, and there are a few other storms that are still, even after 6 or 7 years, still open. There is money there for them to finish their recovery. And science and technology. The bill includes $835 million, a 25% increase, and I want to say this as well. One other thing I think, Senator Shelby, that people don't really understand is how much and how important research and development is that the federal government invests. Now, private companies invest in research and development, but some of the investment that we do is truly so far-fetched that no one in their right mind would invest in it because there's no immediate return. But you've seen time and time again when the federal government steps up and makes those long-term investments in research, what happens? Something is discovered, and the Internet was a good example, by research in the Department of Defense. I could give you other examples. Soon enough, though, the private sector realizes, oh my gosh, this research is a breakthrough, whether it's coming from our DNA, research in health on our DNA, and all the new exciting technologies in health. I can tell you our state is benefiting greatly from the research done 20 years ago on fracking. That wasn't done by Exxon. It wasn't done by Mobil. It was done by the federal labs out west because of research money in one of our bills. I'm not sure which, but potentially in energy, and that is what is leading to the revolution in natural gas. So this baloney that the federal government doesn't have to invest in research and technology, we do it in partnership with the private sector. It's the best system in the world, and we would be shortchanging ourselves and our future economic growth if we didn't continue. And finally, just one more word of a priority. I have put some additional funding by moving some things around for Customs and Immigration and for TSA. I'm not the only senator that represents a state that depends in large part on the hospitality, tourism, and trade. I could list many states in our country, but let me just tell you about Louisiana. We believe in hospitality. We believe it's a good business. We enjoy having people come to our state. They come. We all have a great deal of fun and excitement with our festivals and our fairs, but you know what? At the end of the day, we make money, and we create jobs, and it's an important industry. I am alarmed since 9/11 at the fallout of international travel to the United States. It's only increased by 1%. Now, to put this in perspective, I believe that this number is correct, and I'll check it for the record. The senator from Alabama knows that international travel in the world, I think, has increased by like 400%. So people are going to China. They're going to Korea. You know, there's a growing middle class, and what middle-class people do, besides buy homes and send their kids to school, is they travel. It's just a middle-class thing. We now have more middle-class people in the world than ever in the existence of the world. But they're not coming to the United States because we are not investing in the kinds of infrastructure in our airports and ports that provide a safe but pleasant environment. So I am working very closely with the International Travel Association. I want to thank them publicly for the work that they're doing. I'm one senator that believes in this, and I think the President has also said that international travel means jobs for Americans right here at home. It's something they cannot transport, and I am very happy to speak about this bill. So I see the leaders that are on the floor, the senator from the chairman and the ranking member, and I'm going to put the rest of my remarks into the record. But I want to personally thank them both for bringing our appropriations bills to the floor. I've spoken about Homeland Security. There are other bills that need to be talked about this afternoon. I'm happy that we could work out this agreement with my Republican counterparts. And again, I thank the chairman and the ranking member for their extraordinary leadership and want to submit the rest of my comments to the record.
Without objection. The senator from Alabama.
Madam President, I just want to follow up on some of the comments the senator from Louisiana had made here, very positive comments about research, the role of the federal government in all aspects of research. She's a very hard-working member of the Appropriations Committee, and she's been involved in a lot of this. Whether it's research in health, in the health issues, the National Institutes of Health, cancer, you name it, information technology, energy that she referenced, so many good things come out of this. And I believe overall that the Senate and the House on both sides of the aisle realize this. But with all the breakthroughs in information technology that we have, we can just go back to the research and development that the federal government did that brought us basically our Internet. That just didn't happen. It was built over many, many years and many, many ideas of research. And look at it today. We've all benefited from this overall. But there are threats to this with information technology and everything that we use today, dealing with energy, for example, our power grid. A lot of that, as we all know, is computer driven and operated. Our banking system, information technology, our military, our traffic control system that we rely on every day. I'm sure that our trains and other vehicles that we run, but there are threats to this today. A lot of it know it as cybersecurity, and they're real. We've got to, as we do research in this area, continued research, we can't forget that. And that's a job that we all got to work together. And I believe on the Appropriations Committee, this is a good start today for our challenges of the future. And that's the security of our information system, our grid, our banking system, our Federal Reserve. You can just go on and on. It affects everything in our everyday life, and we shouldn't forget it. But I think we're off to a good start here today. Senator Mikulski, the chairperson of the committee, and I believe this is the first time in a few years that we've come to the floor trying to work together on appropriations, and we're determined to make this regular order work. And I believe that the majority of the senators on my side of the aisle, the Republicans, and the Democratic side of the aisle will, in a few days, bring this to a head, and we'll do something good for the American people, bring some certainty and some good legislation. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
Strongest month of job growth we've seen in many, many years, but the Republican harsh austerity could reverse the progress we're making. We need to reduce our deficit, but we need to do it in a smart way. To combine spending cuts with closing wasteful tax loopholes. The American people don't want to see us retreating into our respective corners. They want us to find common ground, work together to find solutions to the challenges we face. It's too bad that Republicans are even moving further to the right than we thought they could.
The sacrifices the Democrats will have to make, does the Ryan budget make it harder for you guys to even move anywhere in their direction?
I'm so sorry, I didn't follow your question.
Well, the president's been talking about chain CPI. He's been talking about cuts to Medicare and other things that Democrats generally don't approve of. When Paul Ryan comes out with a budget that you describe as even more extreme, does it make it a lot harder for you guys to even negotiate?
Well, I don't think there's any way to negotiate if it's a one-sided negotiation. That's the problem we've had for years now with the Republicans. They're unwilling to do anything that approaches revenue.
Other senators on the Appropriations Committee, and all are welcome to come and comment, but those on the Appropriations Committee actually assigned to do the work will be coming throughout the afternoon to actually describe the content and the bill. I'd like to just talk about the content. You know, we on Appropriations have 12 subcommittees. Of those 12 subcommittees, each has a chair and a ranking member from the other party. The reason I'm telling you this is what it takes to do a bill. So through all of last week, after we got the guidance of our caucus, the guidance of the authorizing committee, guidance from the leadership, we began to put a bill together. Wow, it is not easy. My own staff worked through, and Senator Shelby's, through that faux snowstorm we had, took computers home, worked through all day through the evening. I was back and forth, and we wanted to make sure there was no fog in our bill. And then out of that, the subcommittees gave recommendations. The reason I say that is that that took us to Thursday. We didn't complete, from our end, the framework and substance of the bill until Saturday. That means me, the Democratic majority, the majority party, has the responsibility of putting the bill together. But this is not a one-woman show here. So after we did, we gave it to our counterparts who had been in consultation, broad principles, negotiation between the subcommittees, consultation with the authorizing committees on policy, so where we were heading. Then it was, when we got it to Senator Shelby and his staff, they had to exercise their due diligence. We wanted them to do the due diligence. We wanted them to look through every aspect of that bill to make sure our word of honor, which we've had together for more than 25 years, there were no surprises. There were no hidden little agreements. There were no surprises parachuted in that if we woke up, neither would be happy about. And I must say, I have to compliment Senator Shelby and his staff. They worked through the weekend doing every line item to make sure when they gave he and Senator McConnell and the Republican caucus their best assessment, they had a chance to look at every single line item. And they sure did it, and they worked hard. So there are those who would say we would have liked to have had the bill sooner. We would have liked to have had to get the bill sooner. But we are talking about the funding for the entire United States of America. The entire funding for the United States of America. That's a lot of lines, and that's a lot of items that had to be gone through methodically, diligently, meticulously. And we have moved as expeditiously as we can. So we had then had our bill. We could not, and I really wanted to share it with the House. I think we've been working with the House in a very constructive way, communicating. But it didn't take us until very late yesterday afternoon for us to complete our process as a member of the Appropriations Committee. I would have really loved getting this bill to the floor, filing this bill sooner. But in order to do it right, and in order to do it the right, not only the right content, but the right way, to make sure that the appropriate committees were able to exercise their due diligence, their vigilance, their scrutiny, we now present to the entire Senate a bill. So I hope that we can move forward on our legislation. We want members to take a look at it. We would hope that we could be working on amendments this afternoon. I hope we have permission to go to our bill. We've got two great amendments lined up, different philosophies, but you know, that's what it is. It's what I talked to Senator Ayotte on the floor a couple of weeks ago during sequester. Bring up the amendments. We have an amendment by Senator Harkin on the labor HHS content, but we have an amendment to be offered on President Obama's health care bill. There's a senator who would like to have the full Senate decide, should we defund it? Now, this is an important national debate. Let it come on out. And the only way we can get to that is by letting us go to the bill. We have an arcane procedure in the Senate called motion to proceed. We have to get now, we've made in order to be able to vote, we have to get permission to proceed. I'm going to get to amendments. I'm going to have real debate on real issues. Where are we on labor HHS? What is the Senate's full view on the funding of Obamacare? Let's get out there, and instead of fussing over procedure, let's get to real content. Let's talk about the real issues around funding and what we should be doing to really pass the continuing resolution to keep America's funding going, but where the majority rules and we have our bill. So let's get to the situation where we can move to the bill, where we can offer amendments. Regardless of how you feel about an amendment, we all feel that senators have the right to offer amendments. Let's get to it. Let's get the job done, and let's show we can function as the greatest parliamentary body in the world. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
I'm somewhat amazed, stunned. You would think that someone who is given an answer to the question, yes, should pretty much satisfy them. We've been trying to keep the government from shutting down. I appreciate the work done by the Speaker. I didn't agree with his bill, but I appreciate what he did, and he did it in a timely fashion. The chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Mikulski, has been negotiating with the Republican counterpart, Richard Shelby, for days now. They worked all weekend. They worked late into Sunday night, and they worked out a bipartisan agreement. They offered the amendment here. Now we hear from a couple of senators that let's not take the bill up. They need more time. I thought people wanted to have an open amendment process on this bill, offer amendments. Now, it appears today is gone. They won't be able to offer amendments, I guess, today. I've said all along that we would turn to it as soon as possible. My Republican colleagues said that they want to see the First Amendment that was to be offered. They saw that. They were originally given to certain people in the leadership office, that on Saturday about noon. And there's been every effort to work together on this matter. They wanted to see the First Amendment that would be offered. I've indicated that it was done. They saw it. There was negotiations to get to where that is. But now senators want to prevent us from going to the bill. Now remember, if I file cloture today, the earliest we can have a vote is Thursday. Now, Mr. President, we are going to finish this CR, and we're going to finish the budget before there will be an Easter recess. That's a fact. So everyone should understand that delaying on this because they want to read the bill more deeply, I guess, doesn't really make a lot of sense. We're going to do the budget resolution. I've made that clear. I emphasize it now. And the Republicans have been talking about, even though it's basically without foundation, that we haven't had a budget resolution. We haven't needed one. We had one that was not a resolution. It was a law that set the standards for what we would do with our budget. It set ceilings of how much we would spend. As a result of that, we were able to get the funding for our subcommittees and appropriations. But they want a budget resolution, which isn't as good as law. We want to do that, and we're going to do everything we can to get that done. So if Republicans object to allowing the Senate to be in consideration of a bill negotiated with Republicans, then the only people who will be disadvantaged will be other Republicans I want to be able to offer amendments. So I regret, again, we've come to this. Just when you think it can't get worse, it gets worse. There are things we have to do. The CR is one of those. If it means cutting into the April recess, which we have 2 weeks to do a lot of things we've planned for some time, then that's what we'll need to do. But I am stunned. I learned about this when we had the president of our caucus. I just really am flabbergasted, Mr. President, that here we are on the eve of doing something together, regular order. The regular order around here is stopping every bill from going on the floor. That's what the regular order is. I thought we had some kind of an agreement at the beginning of this Congress that this wasn't going to go on anymore. We had that 2 years ago. We changed the rules here a little bit. But, Mr. President, there is going to be tremendous angst within my caucus, and I think the country to continue trying to legislate with the burdens that we bear, that just one or two people do everything they can to throw a monkey wrench into everything we do. As a country, we are being looked at as being inoperable. It is too bad. It's not good for this institution, and it's really not good for the country.
Absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll. Mr. Alexander.
President.
The senator from Maryland.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the call of the quorum be vacated.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, if you're watching us on C-SPAN, and they do, in our own country and around the world, they say, well, it's Tuesday afternoon, 3:30. What's happening in the United States Senate? We see two senators there, able, seasoned, experienced. Where's the debate? Where's the amendments? Where's the clash of ideas in an open and public forum on what's the best way? Well, we're not doing that because we have arcane rules that people can put what they call a hold on the bill, so we can't proceed to that. Now, in the old days, that was a good idea. You placed a hold. This goes to stagecoach days. You're an Indiana man. You'd understand that. I say to the chair respectfully. But it was so you could get back. If I put a hold, you would put a hold on a bill if you felt I'd offered legislation that could hurt Indiana. And so in your stagecoach, you could dash back here. Well, we don't have stagecoaches anymore. And in fact, we're all right here. I would like to be able to move this bill. There are those senators who want more time. They could actually be looking at the bill if they would let us go this afternoon, because we have two amendments that would take us to 5 or 6, well, gosh, now, till this evening. But we would get two amendments done on two pretty big topics, one of which should be, are we or are we not going to fund the President's health care initiative? We need to move this bill. What is it that Senator Shelby and I are trying to do? To pass a continuing resolution to fully fund the federal government with the scrutiny and oversight of the Congress by October 1st. Okay? Right now, we have the CR, as it's called, the funding, the continued funding expires March 27th. Some people might say, well, that's 15 days from now. But not really, Mr. President, because we have to pass our bill. We have to go to the House and then have a bill to be signed by the President. We would like to do that before the Easter Passover recess, which is we break next week. So we would really like to do it, and I know one of my colleagues is on the floor. You know, I recognize the right for senators to really review and scrutinize a bill. I've done it myself, so I respect that. The other, Mr. President, is that in the days of really where we're skeptical and even suspicious of one another, you really wanted to look at it to make sure there was no cute gimmicks, no little fast hand motions, no earmarks parachuted in. But I can say this. After the Democrats finished the bill and we gave it to Senator Shelby and his staff, this bill has been very scrutinized so that any of those tricks of the old days are not here. And I really need everybody's attention. There's a lot of conversation going on. But what I want to say is this. And if anyone spots something that they think is a cute gimmick, I would sure like to know about it. But I recognize the senators' rights, but I asked them, I asked them if we could at least proceed to the bill where while we're debating these two big amendments, they would do it. Would I have liked to have made it available 72 hours? The answer was yes. But the magnitude of what we did and the due diligence necessary by the Republicans, it was physically and intellectually not meaning the scrutiny involved, oversight, until very late yesterday. I would have liked to have done better. When we get back to regular order, it will be better. But, you know, I feel like I've got multiple decks that I've been dealt. The real deck, a pinochle deck, a poker deck, and so on. So, anyway, I'm just making a plea that we go to our bill, recognizing that the senators should scrutinize the bills and recognizing senators' right to offer amendments. So that's just simply my plea. I know some of my colleagues are on the floor, and I'll be happy to engage in a conversation with them, two of whom I have an enormous respect for.
First of all, I want to tell the chairwoman of the Appropriation Committee that I actually very much appreciate her work, and I actually trust her to do the right thing. But we got this bill last night at 9 o'clock. It's a 500-page bill, and it has multiple levels of authorizations in it that we found so far, authorization on an appropriation bill. It has what I would consider, and we haven't been completely through it, some things that are totally counterintuitive to where we find ourselves today in terms of spending money. And before I could grant a unanimous consent, and I will, as soon as we get through with the bill, I plan on granting unanimous consent. But I want to know, we just heard the majority leader say he can't understand why somebody wants to read this bill. We're talking excess of $1 trillion. That's one of the problems. One of the reasons we're $17 trillion in debt is people don't read the bills. So and I also want to say to my friend from Alabama, I have greatest praise for you. You know some of the heartburns that I have in this, but we knew that was coming from the House. But to not allow us the time to assess what you have produced by being able to read and study the bill is really going against the best traditions of the Senate, but it's also going against common sense. How do we know whether we want to offer amendments unless we've been able to read the bill? Are we just to blindly say whatever you want to do, we're going to approve it because we have a deadline at the end of this month? You know, I'm willing to do what is necessary to make sure we get a continuing resolution. But I'm not willing to do that blindly. And so I'm going to study this bill. We've got 3 members, staffs working full-time. We have had since last night, investigating, looking at this bill. And I won't go into the details of the things we've seen so far, but we at least ought to have the opportunity before we're rushed into granting unanimous consent to go forward. And I plan on allowing that. But I'm not going to allow it until I know what the agreement's going to be in terms of amendments, and whether or not, even if we've read the bill and have some good ideas, whether or not we're going to be allowed to offer them. This is an appropriation bill. We ought to be allowed to offer amendments with our ideas on ways to save this country money and increase its efficiency and increase its effectiveness and still meet the deadline that the chairwoman outlined. So I hope you will understand why we're not in any mood to right now to grant it until we've actually know what we're talking about. And to ask anything less of us, you're asking us to deny the very oath that we took when we came here. So with that, I would yield the floor and thank my colleague John McCain for being down here.
Senator.